am Sara Antony, 23 years old, a financial analyst from Washington. The betrayal that changed everything came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The kind of day when the gray sky pressed low and even the city seemed tired. I was standing in the glass conference room, heart pounding with equal parts excitement and nerves, as my manager Linda Hayes presented the quarterly performance report. My report, my late nights, my formulas, my analysis. But when she reached the slide that showcased the breakthrough, the new forecasting model that reduced the firm's error margin by 40%, she said, smiling at the executives, "This was something I developed after reviewing our data flaws." I froze. The click of the projector echoed in my chest like a gunshot. My name wasn't anywhere on the slide, not in the title, not even in the footnotes. "Brilliant work, Linda," our director said, clapping. "This could change the way we do projections." I felt the sting behind my eyes, but I swallowed it. I couldn't ruin the moment, not publicly. Linda turned her head slightly and looked at me, a small, knowing smirk forming at the corner of her mouth. That's when I realized it wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. That smirk said, "Stay quiet, kid. You're too small to matter." Have you ever experienced this kind of betrayal? Share your story in the comments, and subscribe if you believe no one should be treated this way. That night, I stayed in the office long after everyone left. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly as I stared at the spreadsheet that had once felt like my biggest achievement. Every formula, every macro, every data trail, I had built it from scratch. Linda had taken all of it. I still remember her words from earlier that week. She had asked for a quick review of my final draft, saying she wanted to make sure it was aligned with company tone. I didn't think twice. I trusted her. She was my mentor, the woman who'd hired me right out of college. Now, her betrayal burned through that trust like acid. I sat there at my desk, watching the rain hit the windows, and I thought about where I came from. My small town in Yakima, my father working double shifts just so I could attend a good university. He used to tell me, "Sara, you don't have to be loud to be brilliant. Let your work speak." I had believed him, but that day, I learned something ugly. Sometimes your work speaks, and someone else takes the microphone. The next morning, Linda strutted into the office with a box of pastries, celebrating her success. "Team effort," she said, handing out croissants. "Sara, make sure you update the forecast tracker by Monday. The directors want a deeper breakdown." I stared at her, gripping my coffee cup. "Congratulations," I managed to say, my voice tight. "Thank you," she said sweetly, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "You're young. You'll have plenty of chances to shine. Just learn how this world works first." That sentence stayed with me. It wasn't advice. It was a warning. Days turned into weeks, and the resentment festered. I watched as Linda basked in her new reputation. She was promoted to senior manager, invited to panels, even featured in an internal newsletter titled "Women Leading Change in Finance." Meanwhile, I was still at my cubicle, the invisible analyst behind someone else's glory. One night, while compiling data for the next quarter, I overheard two senior associates whispering near the copier. "Linda's forecasting model isn't working anymore," one of them said. "Numbers are all over the place." "Of course," the other replied. Because it was never hers, my heart raced. They knew, people knew, but no one said a word. Because Linda had power, influence, connections, and I had silence, but silence can be dangerous. It listens, it learns, it remembers. That night, as the office emptied out, I made a copy of every file, every version, every timestamp, every email that showed my name on the project drafts. I backed them up on my personal drive, not for revenge, not yet, for proof. Because someday, I told myself, the truth would need a voice, and I'd be ready to give it one. When I finally left the building, the rain had stopped. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement, glowing like quiet promises. I looked up at the city skyline, tall, merciless, beautiful, and whispered, "You have no idea what I'm capable of." Linda thought she'd stolen my moment. What she didn't realize was that she had just written the beginning of my story. The office felt colder after that presentation. Maybe it was just me, or maybe betrayal has a way of sucking the warmth out of a place. Every sound, the hum of printers, the chatter near the coffee machine, even the tap of keyboards, felt heavier. Linda acted as if nothing had happened. She smiled, laughed loudly, sent motivational emails to the team. "Teamwork makes the dream work," she'd write, while taking credit for the dream I had built alone. It started with little things. She stopped including me in high-level meetings, the same meetings where my analysis was being dissected. When I'd ask for updates, she'd say, "Oh, it was mostly leadership talk. You wouldn't have found it relevant." Once, during a brainstorming session, I presented a new idea for risk mitigation models. Linda interrupted mid-sentence, chuckling. "That's ambitious, Sara," she said, glancing at the others. "But maybe let's keep it simple this time, okay? We don't need to reinvent the wheel." Everyone laughed politely. I smiled to hide the sting. But later that day, I saw an email draft open on her screen, titled New Predictive Risk Model Proposal by Linda Hayes. My model. My concept. Again, I started noticing the pattern. She'd take my work, tweak a few numbers, and parade it as her own. I wanted to confront her. But how do you fight someone who controls your promotions, your reviews, your paycheck? I told myself I'd endure it, that someday I'd earn enough credibility for my work to speak louder than her lies. But I was wrong. One Friday morning, Linda announced a new initiative, the Financial Innovation Task Force. It was designed to mentor young analysts, supposedly her idea to empower new voices. She assigned me to it as an assistant. "Not a lead. You'll gain valuable exposure. Sara," she said in front of the team, her tone syrupy sweet. "It'll be good practice for when you're ready to handle leadership." That one word, ready, cut deep. Later that afternoon, while setting up for a team call, I overheard her talking to one of the executives. "She's talented," Linda said, "but immature, too emotional for high-pressure decisions. Still, I'm guiding her." My hand froze on the mouse. Emotional, immature. Those words would follow me for months, whispered in reviews, hinted in feedback. Her narrative became my reputation. Colleagues who used to eat lunch with me began drifting away. I'd walk into the cafeteria and conversations would pause. When I sat down, they'd change topics. I caught snippets sometimes. "She's ambitious, but you know." Or Linda says she's still learning the ropes. That was how Linda operated. Not with open hostility, but with quiet poison. Words that eroded confidence one drop at a time. Even my closest coworker, Ryan, grew distant. One day, when I asked him to review a report, he hesitated. "Linda told me not to get too involved in your drafts," he said awkwardly. "Something about you needing to develop independence." Independence. The irony made my stomach turn. A month later, I received my performance review. The document was glowing, except for one section: needs improvement in communication and emotional control. It was signed by Linda. I confronted her after the meeting. "You know that's not true," I said, holding the paper in my trembling hands. She smiled, sipping her coffee. "Sara, feedback isn't personal. It's for your growth. You're sabotaging me." Her eyes flicked up, cold and sharp. "Watch your tone. If you can't handle constructive criticism, maybe this field isn't for you." I stood there, speechless. That was when I realized she wasn't just taking credit. She was building a case to bury me. The moment that broke me, the final straw, came 2 weeks later. Our firm had a major client presentation, a chance to pitch a portfolio I had spent 3 months perfecting. It was my opportunity to finally step into the spotlight. The night before, Linda called me. "Hey, Sara," she said casually, "I need you to stay home tomorrow. The meeting's been rescheduled for leadership only." Something in her tone felt off. The next day, a teammate texted me, "You were amazing." "That model killed it!" The board loved the presentation. Confused, I replied, "What presentation?" He sent a photo. Linda standing at the head of the table, my charts projected behind her, my signature still visible in the corner of one slide. My chest caved in. I couldn't breathe. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, lights off, phone buzzing with fake congratulations. My reflection stared back at me through the dark window. Exhausted, humiliated, hollow. I had done everything right. Worked hard, stayed quiet, trusted the system, and it had betrayed me. But somewhere beneath the despair, a small ember of anger began to glow. That ember whispered, "This isn't the end." I didn't know how yet, but I knew one thing for sure. Linda Hayes wasn't going to get away with this forever. That night, I opened my laptop. I started digging. Emails, timestamps, draft versions. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I planned. She thought I was emotional, weak, easy to silence. But I wasn't broken. I was awakening. The breaking point didn't arrive with fireworks. It came quietly, in the hum of the office lights, the rustle of papers, and the hollow applause that followed Linda's latest achievement. A month after the client pitch, the company announced an internal award, Innovator of the Quarter. Linda's name was on the announcement email, accompanied by a picture of her holding a trophy. My trophy. The caption read, "Recognized for her groundbreaking financial forecasting model." My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't even blink as I reread it. That was supposed to be mine. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, my throat tightening. I had told myself for weeks that I could handle her lies, that I could outwork her, that karma would catch up, but as the photo burned in my mind, something inside me cracked. I got up from my desk and walked out. I didn't even grab my bag. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. The sky had that pale gray tint of an unfinished painting. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay there anymore. I ended up at a small park near the waterfront. I sat on a bench, still in my work clothes, my badge around my neck, my hands trembling. A couple walked past me, laughing. A jogger waved at someone across the street. The world moved on while mine was collapsing. I pressed my palms to my eyes and finally let the tears fall. I had never felt so small. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. "Proud of you, sweetheart. Saw the company newsletter? That's your project, right? Even if she's the face of it, I know you did the real work." That message, meant to comfort, twisted the knife deeper. Because my mom wasn't wrong. Everyone knew. My colleagues, my manager's peers. Even the executives who congratulated her must have suspected, but no one spoke up. Because in corporate life, truth is optional. Power isn't. That night I called Ryan, the only person at work I'd once trusted. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Did you see the announcement?" He hesitated. "Yeah, she took it again, Ryan. My project." A pause. "Then Sara, please don't do this to yourself. It's just how things work." I froze. "What's that supposed to mean?" "She's management. You're still new. Pick your battles." "Pick my battles?" My voice rose, sharp with disbelief. "She's destroyed my credibility." He sighed. "Look, I get it. But if you push back, it'll only make you look emotional. Just let it go. That word, emotional, again. My entire body went rigid. I can't let it go." I whispered. "I'm saying this as a friend. Don't make an enemy out of Linda. She'll ruin you." He hung up before I could respond. I sat there in the dark, the dial tone buzzing in my ear, realizing that I was already ruined. Over the next few days, I moved like a ghost. I did my tasks, attended meetings, smiled when required. But inside, I was unraveling. The humiliation didn't fade. It deepened. Every time I saw her name on another email, another project, another announcement, it felt like I was fading out of my own story. I started doubting myself. Maybe I wasn't strong enough. Maybe this was all I'd ever be. A shadow worker making other people shine. But one evening, as I was packing up, I heard Linda's voice behind me. "Leaving already?" she said, her tone sugar-sweet. I turned, forcing a polite smile. "Yes, finished early. Good," she said. "You're improving, see? Feedback works." Her grin widened. That same smirk that started it all. "You'll get your chance someday, Sarah, when you're ready." And that was it. That was the moment something inside me died, and something new took its place. Not despair. Not sadness. Resolve. That night I didn't go home. I went to a cafe near the office that stayed open late. I opened my laptop and began scrolling through every old file I had backed up. Reports, emails, notes, and drafts. My work, my fingerprints, my evidence, every timestamp, every revision, every track change showing my initials. If Linda had built her career on lies, then I would build my justice on proof. But I wasn't going to expose her yet. No, that would be too easy, too small. I wanted her to feel what I had felt. To watch everything she'd built crumble in slow motion. For that, I needed patience, strategy, timing. As I sat there sipping cold coffee, I remembered something my father once said when I told him about failing a test in school. "Sarah, life isn't about avoiding unfairness. It's about deciding how you'll fight when it finds you." Back then, I didn't understand, but now, it made perfect sense. I wasn't the girl who cried on park benches anymore. I was the woman who was going to make sure Linda Hayes regretted underestimating me. Over the following week, I started observing her, carefully. I noted her meetings, her work habits, the way she spoke to executives. She was confident, charming, and manipulative. But she had blind spots, arrogance being her biggest one. She trusted email trails too much. She left files unencrypted. She assumed no one beneath her would dare question her, and that arrogance would be her downfall. The first thing I did was quietly rebuild the financial model, the real one, with every improvement I had originally suggested but she'd ignored. I polished it until it was flawless. Then I started sharing small, harmless snippets with trusted contacts outside her circle. Analysts at partner firms, alumni from my university, friends in consulting. Just an idea I'm working on, I'd say. Word began to spread, quietly at first, then faster. People were impressed, curious, intrigued. It was only a matter of time before someone important noticed, and when they did, I'd be ready, because this time the spotlight wouldn't be hers to steal. I packed up my things that night, feeling something I hadn't in months: control. The storm that had nearly destroyed me was now the one I was learning to ride, and for the first time, I smiled. Linda thought she'd won. She had no idea the game had just begun. The strange thing about betrayal is that even when you fight back, it leaves a mark. It doesn't just bruise your confidence, it rewrites how you see yourself. In the weeks after Linda's fake award, my world became smaller. The people I used to eat lunch with barely made eye contact. Conversations ended when I approached. I wasn't fired, but it felt like I had been quietly erased. Every morning, I'd sit at my desk, staring at spreadsheets while the laughter from Linda's office echoed down the hallway. The world had decided which one of us mattered. And it wasn't me. I stopped going out with coworkers. I stopped answering texts. Even my mother noticed. "You sound tired," she said over the phone one night. "Are you taking care of yourself?" "I'm fine, Mom." I lied. Because how do you explain this kind of pain? The humiliation of being invisible while someone else wears your accomplishments like jewelry? At night, I lay awake replaying everything. The meeting, the smirk, the praise she didn't deserve. Sometimes I imagined storming into her office, slamming the proof on her desk, and watching her face crumble. But then I'd remember. She held the power, not me, and no one believes the intern who cries wolf about the queen. Work became mechanical. I clocked in, I worked, I left. But inside, I was falling apart. I started skipping meals, staying late in empty conference rooms, staring at blank slides. My passion, the thing that used to make me love finance, the thrill of solving problems, was gone. I was angry at her. But worse, I was angry at myself for letting her win. One night, I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by piles of old reports. The city outside was alive. Cars, lights, laughter, while I drowned in silence. I remember whispering out loud, "Who am I now? and no answer came. A week later, I got a call from Marissa, an old classmate from my university's business program. "Sara, I saw your name on LinkedIn," she said. "You're still at Linden Finance, right? We're looking for consultants for a data modeling competition. You should join." I almost laughed. "I don't think I'm in the right headspace to compete." "Come on," she said. "You're one of the best analysts I know. You could win this thing in your sleep." Her confidence in me hit differently. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone believe in me. After we hung up, I stared at my laptop for a long time. Then I opened a new Excel sheet. The numbers looked foreign at first, like a language I used to speak fluently but had forgotten. But as I typed formulas, built charts, and tested scenarios, something shifted inside me. I wasn't doing this for Linda. I wasn't doing this for anyone's approval. I was doing it for me. Over the next few nights, I worked on that competition entry like my life depended on it. The challenge was to design a predictive economic model for small business growth. Complex, ambitious, exactly my kind of problem. At first, it was rough. My focus wavered, self-doubt creeping in. I'd catch myself thinking, what if Linda was right? What if I'm not ready? But I kept going, because stopping would mean she'd won again. I drank too much coffee, slept too little, but for the first time in months, I felt alive. I was building something that was mine, untouched by manipulation, free of stolen credit. And when I finally finished the model, it was perfect, elegant, efficient. It reminded me of who I used to be. The next morning at work, I walked into the break room to grab coffee and froze. Linda was there, laughing with the director, her manicured hand resting on the counter. "Can you believe it?" she said. "The firm's entering the National Innovation Awards this quarter, and they want me to lead the financial modeling submission." I blinked. The same competition? She caught my eye and smiled, not warmly but knowingly. "Sara," she said, "you'll help me prepare the base models, right?" My heart sank. She didn't know I'd already entered the same competition independently, under my name, with my work. But in that moment, I realized something crucial. Fate had just handed me the perfect setup. That night, I broke down again, but this time not out of weakness, out of exhaustion. Months of betrayal, isolation, and invisible effort had hardened me, but the scars still bled when no one was watching. I cried until there were no tears left. Then I stared at my reflection in the window. My eyes were red, my face pale. I barely recognized myself, but beneath the wreckage there was someone else. Someone new. Someone dangerous. A voice inside whispered, "This ends with you." I decided to stay silent. I didn't tell anyone about my independent entry. I kept working under Linda, nodding, smiling, pretending. Every time she dismissed my ideas or took another piece of my work, I wrote it down. Every email, every stolen slide, every team credit that excluded me, documented, dated, archived. It was like watching my own downfall while quietly writing the script for her destruction. And I waited. Because for once, time was on my side. 2 weeks before the competition results were announced, I met with Marissa again. She grinned as I walked into the cafe. "You're not going to believe this. Your entry made it to the final round." "They loved your model." I sat down, stunned. "Wait, what?" "You're one of the top 3 finalists," she said. "They're announcing the winner live at the business summit next month." I couldn't stop smiling. For the first time, validation came from outside Linda's shadow, from the world itself. But more than pride, I felt something colder. Because soon, when the results were public, everyone, including Linda, would finally see what I was capable of. And when she realized I was the one who beat her at her own game, I'd be there to watch her fall. Power arrived in the smallest of packages, a quiet email, a name, a connection. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was practical, like a key you find in a drawer when you've almost given up searching. A week after Marissa called to tell me I'd made the final round, my inbox pinged with a message from a firm I'd interned at during college. The subject line read, "Opportunity to consult? Quick call. I almost deleted it thinking it was spam, until I saw who it was from. Ellen Park, the senior analyst who had once mentored me during that internship. Ellen had a reputation for honesty and a network that mattered. I answered immediately. On the call, she got straight to the point. Sara, I've been watching you. Your model landed on my desk. Elegant work. I'm putting together a small advisory group for a client who needs a robust forecasting system, and I want you on it. Her voice was steady, no sugarcoating. But there's more. I've heard murmurs about how your work has been treated. If you're interested, I can help you get proper credit. Quietly at first, then public if needed. I felt my pulse in my throat. Why would you do that? I asked. Because talent shouldn't be invisible, she said simply. And because someone has to stand up to the way credit gets stolen in this industry. I don't need drama, Sara. I need results. I think you can give them to me. That was the moment I realized the first kind of power. Allies. People with integrity who could amplify my work without needing to turn it into a spectacle. Ellen introduced me to the advisory group. The client was a mid-sized tech company trying to stabilize cash flow while scaling. It was the exact kind of problem my model handled. I worked on the project nights and weekends, but this time it was different. My name was on every email, every commit, every deliverable. Ellen made sure of it. When our presentation to the client went well, they asked for an implementation plan. Ellen advocated for me in the meeting. Sara led the modeling effort. Her approach is why we can move forward. Hearing someone with her standing say my name felt like sunlight cutting through fog. That small validation rippled outward. One of the client partners mentioned our work to a contact at a financial conference. Word moved, not as gossip, but as professional referral. People began to ask, "Who is Sara Antony?" in a respectful tone. The second kind of power I discovered was documentation. I'd already been saving drafts and timestamps, but Ellen taught me how to make that proof airtight. Keep everything in a shared repository, she said. Version control with commit messages. Email summaries after meetings. If you ever have to prove authorship, the trail needs to be clear and professional. I started a secure folder. Everything labeled, dated, and summarized. Drafts named with version numbers. Memos that traced my thought process. I wrote polite follow-up emails after each interaction and CC'd the right people. It felt tedious, but it felt protective, like armor you could wear under a suit. There was a third kind of power I didn't expect. The leverage of reputation. Ellen connected me with a small journal that published technical pieces for practitioners. She suggested I write a short article on the method I'd used for the competition. At first I balked. Who publishes technical methods under their own name? But Ellen insisted. You did the work. Let the community know how you solved this. The piece went live and circulated among a niche but influential group. Comments arrived, inquiries from other analysts, invitations to speak at a webinar, even a recruiter who asked if I'd ever considered moving into a role with ownership of modeling across business lines. My reputation began to act as a shield. The more visible my methods were, the harder it would be for anyone to claim them as their own without detection. Meanwhile, Linda kept moving through the office like a glossy magazine cover. She publicized her model in internal newsletters and external panels. But the more her name appeared, the more discrepancies people began to notice. Phrases in her presentations that matched my article verbatim. Analyses presented with slightly different assumptions that changed the output. People started asking quiet questions. One afternoon, Ryan stopped by my desk. He looked nervous. Sara, I read your article, he said. It's solid. I want to apologize. I didn't know how to help before. His voice cracked with guilt. I should have spoken up months ago. I'm sorry, I nodded. Thanks, Ryan. It's not just on you. That conversation mattered more than he knew. It meant the isolation was ending. People who had stayed silent were starting to think differently. Once a few respected voices noticed the truth, the corporate narrative began to wobble. Ellen's strategy was careful. We didn't aim to humiliate Linda publicly. We aimed to make appropriation impossible. We encouraged teams to adopt version controls, to use collaboration platforms that recorded authorship, and to ask for authorship lines on presentations. Small process changes, institutional shifts that made it harder for credit to be stolen. And we started to speak in private to people who mattered, other senior analysts, partners, and even HR contacts. We framed it as a conversation about process improvement, not personal attack. That kept the tone professional and reduced the chance of being dismissed as petty. Ellen also had another suggestion: mentorship program where senior analysts would mentor junior talent with transparent tracking of contributions. If you're going to build credibility, she said, do it in a way that helps others too. That's the kind of power no one can take from you. Power, I learned, wasn't a sudden coup. It was a series of small accumulations. Allies who named you, documentation that proved you, reputation that preceded you, and systems that protected you. Each piece made the next easier to find. 2 months later, at a partner meeting, a slide deck circulated with my name on it. Not as a footnote, not hidden under Linda's header, my name, clear and credited for the model. I felt something loosen in my chest, a weight I hadn't realized I'd carried for months. Linda's eyes flashed across the room when the slide appeared. She smiled politely, but it was harder now. Her control had friction. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the city lights a soft smear beyond the window. I opened the secure folder and looked at the trail I'd built. Emails, drafts, articles, client notes. Proof that I had always been the author of my work. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a shadow. I felt like someone with a map and a plan. The path forward was becoming clearer. And it was on that path that I noticed an unexpected new thread. The small, tentative application from Linda's daughter to our summer internship program. I saved that email too. I didn't know yet how it would fit into the plan, but I knew 2 things. I had power now, and I wouldn't waste it. By the time spring painted the city in faint gold, I had changed. I no longer flinched when I saw Linda's emails pop up, nor did I grind my teeth when she took center stage in meetings. I had become deliberate, quiet, but far from passive. Revenge wasn't about rage anymore. It was about design. The first step was to make myself indispensable in ways Linda couldn't predict or replicate. I started volunteering for interdepartmental projects, the kind that connected finance with marketing and operations. These were projects Linda ignored because they didn't look glamorous on paper, but they were gold mines for visibility. I took every opportunity to present insights, not just crunch numbers. I spoke up in meetings with data so airtight that even Linda couldn't dismiss me. One day, the CFO, Mr. Hargrove, stopped me after a budget meeting. "Sara, that was sharp work. I didn't know you were leading cross-team reviews now." "I've been helping where I can," I said lightly, careful not to sound strategic. He smiled. "Keep doing that. We need more analysts who see the bigger picture." That was the second kind of power I was learning. Credibility that moved upward faster than gossip. At the same time, I fed Linda exactly what she wanted, credit bait. I left partial drafts of proposals in shared folders, complete with subtle errors that only someone unfamiliar with the real data would miss. Predictably, she swooped in. Within a week, she presented one of my half-finished decks at an internal strategy session, claiming it as her own. By the time the VP reviewed it, he noticed the flaws that could have cost the company real money. Linda tried to shift the blame. "It must have been a data issue for my junior analyst," she said. I waited for my name to surface, but Mr. Hargrove intervened. "Sara's models are always accurate. Are you sure she even worked on this?" Her silence was answer enough. That moment didn't destroy her, but it weakened her armor. Quietly, her image of perfection began to crack. Meanwhile, I leaned further into Ellen's mentorship. She was a chess player in this world, every move calculated, every word purposeful. "You're doing well," she told me one evening over a call. "But don't rush it. Let her sink into her own arrogance. People like Linda destroy themselves. You just have to give them the stage." Her words replayed in my head over and over. Give them the stage. I understood now. Revenge wasn't about confrontation. It was about illumination, letting the truth become undeniable in a room full of witnesses. And the biggest stage of all was coming soon, the National Business Summit. The competition finals were scheduled to take place at that summit. 3 finalists were set to present their financial models before an audience of industry leaders, investors, and media outlets. When I saw the official list of presenters, my breath caught. Finalist 1, Linda Hayes. Senior Financial Manager, Linden Finance. Finalist 2, Sara Antony. Financial Analyst, Linden Finance. Finalist 3, Daniel Wu, Apex Consulting. My heart raced. We were both finalists, competing head-to-head. I knew the irony wasn't lost on her. The woman who had stolen my work would now have to stand beside me on stage and prove her brilliance. Only this time, her brilliance didn't exist without me. In the weeks leading up to the summit, Linda grew more erratic. She cornered me in the elevator once. "So," she said coolly, "I hear you're presenting too." I smiled, deliberately calm. "Yes, should be fun." Her eyes flickered. "Don't take it personally if I win again, Sarah. It's all experience." "Of course," I replied. "Experience counts for a lot, especially when it's genuine." Her jaw tightened. She didn't respond. From that day forward, she avoided me, but I watched her. I noticed her scouring shared files, trying to find new ideas to enhance her model. I noticed her whispering to the IT assistant, requesting access to old project drives. She was desperate. And desperation makes even the cleverest people sloppy. A week before the summit, I uploaded a revised draft of my model to the shared drive, a decoy file that contained a hidden data formula designed to mislead anyone who copied it without understanding its core logic. Within hours, Linda downloaded it. I didn't confront her. I didn't even mention it. I just smiled the next morning when I saw her rehearsing a presentation in the conference room with slides that looked suspiciously familiar. The trap was set. On the day of the summit, I arrived early. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted my blazer, but my voice was steady when I greeted Ellen, who was already there. "You ready?" she asked, eyes gleaming. More than ever. When Linda entered the hall, she was radiant in red, confident, camera-ready, her signature charm on full display. She caught my eye across the room and gave me a smile so polished it could cut glass. But for the first time, I didn't feel smaller beside her. I felt prepared. Linda presented first. Her slides looked impressive, sleek, until she reached her final model demonstration. There was a murmur in the crowd as the data output glitched on the screen. Numbers didn't align. The predictions swung wildly, she faltered. "That's odd," she stammered, clicking through slides. "It must be a technical issue." Mr. Hargrove, sitting in the audience, frowned. "That doesn't look like a system error. That looks like a logic flaw." Her face drained of color. When it was my turn to present, I walked up calmly, my version of the model loaded smoothly, projecting clean, coherent results that told the story of the data flawlessly. When I finished, there was silence. Then applause, real, thunderous applause. Linda wouldn't meet my eyes. Later that evening, I received an email from the competition committee. "Congratulations. Ms. Antony, you have been selected as this year's winner." I didn't smile right away. I just sat in the quiet, reading it again and again. I thought of every night I'd spent doubting myself. Every time someone told me to let it go. Every time she smirked as she walked away with what was mine. And now, the world saw what I could do without her shadow. I didn't post about it right away. I didn't call attention to Linda's loss. I didn't need to. The next morning, LinkedIn did it for me. Posts from attendees, executives, analysts, all congratulating Sara Antony for her breakthrough model. The headlines used my name, and Linda's name was nowhere to be seen. The revenge wasn't complete yet, but the setup was flawless. The stage was lit, and next, it was time for the reckoning. The morning after the summit, I woke up to find my inbox glowing with congratulatory messages. The subject lines felt surreal. "Congratulations, Sarah. Brilliant presentation. You deserved that win." My phone buzzed nonstop. LinkedIn notifications poured in, each one another tiny validation. My name was trending on the company page, not Linda's. Mine. And that's when I knew. It was time. Time for the truth to come out. When I walked into the office that Monday, everything felt different. Eyes followed me, not in pity or dismissal, but in recognition. People smiled, congratulated me. Some were awkward, unsure how to act around someone they had underestimated, but not Linda. She stayed in her office, blinds half closed, face buried in fake work. When I passed by, she didn't look up. The queen had fallen silent. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The strike I'd been planning wasn't about shouting. It was about precision, letting truth slice through her lies like glass. That afternoon, I sent a polite email to the executive board. Subject: clarification of authorship for recent projects. Dear team, as many of you know, our firm participated in several modeling initiatives this year. I've been asked by external partners to provide detailed documentation for authorship verification, as our work is being cited in professional publications. Attached, you'll find the relevant data, model development notes, and version logs. I'm proud to represent Linden Finance in the national competition, and grateful for everyone who supported my efforts. Warm regards, Sara Antony. I didn't mention Linda once. But I didn't have to. The attachments spoke for themselves. Time-stamped files, email threads, drafts with edit histories showing my authorship. It was the digital equivalent of DNA evidence. Within hours, the email chain exploded. By lunchtime, whispers had turned into open speculation. "Did you see Sarah's document trail?" someone murmured near the break room. "She's been leading those models for months." "I knew something didn't add up," another replied. Linda's presentations always felt rehearsed. When I walked in to grab coffee, the conversation stopped. Then quietly, Ryan spoke. "You did good, Sara," he said softly. I smiled. "Thanks, Ryan, for believing me, even if it was late." He nodded, eyes downcast. Better late than never. Meanwhile, Linda's office door stayed shut all afternoon, but the real blow hadn't even landed yet. 2 days later, an internal memo went out from HR and the executive team. Effective immediately, Linden Finance will be implementing a new authorship recognition policy to ensure transparency in project contributions. This initiative was inspired by recent discrepancies identified in internal credit distribution. The memo didn't name names, but everyone knew what it meant. When the firm posted my award win on LinkedIn, Linda's name was nowhere in sight. The caption read, "Proud to celebrate our own Sara Antony, whose innovative modeling framework earned national recognition. A testament to integrity, persistence, and excellence." That single word, integrity, was a dagger. Linda's silence was deafening. Later that week, I found her waiting in the parking garage. Her heels clicked against the concrete as she stepped out of the shadows. "You think you've won?" she hissed. I stopped walking, keeping my tone measured. I didn't win anything that wasn't already mine. Her voice trembled. "You humiliated me. I built this reputation. You think they'll remember you longer than me? I don't need them to," I said quietly. "I just needed them to know the truth." Her face twisted, pride and panic warring inside her. "You'll regret this," she spat. I almost laughed. "No, Linda, you will." Then I walked away, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the garage. That was the first time she realized she wasn't just losing her spotlight. She was losing control. By the end of the quarter, Linda's projects had been reassigned. The executive team cited structural changes and leadership realignment, but the staff knew better. I was promoted to senior financial strategist. And then the irony, a job application crossed my desk for a summer internship. The name at the top made me pause. Emily Hayes, Linda's daughter. I didn't react right away. I read her resume carefully. She was smart, driven even. The kind of person who might thrive under the right guidance. When HR asked if I'd be willing to interview her, I said yes. Emily walked into the room looking nervous but polite. "Ms. Antony," she said, shaking my hand. "Thank you for meeting me." I smiled gently. "Please, call me Sara." She sat down, hands clasped in her lap. "I really admire your work, especially your recent model. It's been referenced in my university's case studies." Her sincerity caught me off guard. I studied her for a moment. She had her mother's sharp eyes, but not her mother's arrogance. "Tell me something," I asked softly. "What does success mean to you?" She thought about it. "Making a difference without hurting anyone to get there." I nodded slowly. That's a good answer, and in that moment I decided the cycle would end here. I would not punish the daughter for the mother's sins, but I would make sure she learned from them. The week after Emily's interview, an investigative article dropped online, Corporate Deception, How a Rising Analyst's Work Was Stolen, and How She Fought Back. It was written by a journalist who had attended the summit and had followed up after seeing inconsistencies in credit claims. The article didn't name Linda directly, but it quoted sources from inside Linden Finance. The story painted a vivid picture of betrayal, perseverance, and poetic justice. By the next morning, it had gone viral in the industry. The firm doubled down on its narrative, promoting transparency, celebrating my leadership, and quietly distancing itself from Linda's ethics breach. Linda resigned a week later. No announcement. No farewell email. Just gone. When I walked into my office that day, sunlight pooled across my desk. I looked around the quiet floor and felt peace, not triumph. Not vindication, just peace. The strike was never about destroying her. It was about reclaiming myself. I looked at my nameplate, Sara Antony, Senior Financial Strategist, and smiled. She thought my silence was weakness. But silence, used wisely, can be the loudest strike of all. When the article went viral, everything shifted overnight. My inbox became a storm of messages, journalists asking for interviews, strangers writing to thank me for speaking out, and professionals sharing their own stories of being silenced. The firm's PR department scrambled. Statements were drafted, deleted, redrafted again. Words like transparency, ethics, and growth started appearing in every internal email. But everyone knew what had really happened. It wasn't about corporate virtue, it was about reputation. And this time, the reputation they were protecting was mine. 2 days after the article broke, I was invited to appear on a financial podcast. It wasn't my kind of spotlight. I preferred numbers to microphones. But Ellen encouraged me. "This is your story now," she said. "Don't let anyone else narrate it." I remember sitting in the studio, the microphone glowing red. The host leaned forward. "Sara, your story has inspired thousands of women in finance. What do you want others to learn from it?" I smiled softly, the words forming with quiet certainty. That silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means we're building the strength to speak at the right time. The episode aired that evening and exploded online. My quote circulated on LinkedIn, Twitter, even in industry newsletters. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It became a rallying cry, a truth too many people had swallowed for too long. In contrast, Linda's world was collapsing in slow motion. Former colleagues unfollowed her, conference invitations were withdrawn, and her once celebrated name was quietly scrubbed from the firm's history. I didn't rejoice. I'd already won the only victory that mattered: respect. Still, one morning, an email arrived from her. The subject line was blank. "Sara, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say I understand now what I did. I was afraid of being forgotten, of losing my edge. That doesn't excuse it, but it's the truth. Take care of Emily. She's a good kid." Linda, I read it twice and then closed it. I didn't reply, not out of hatred, out of peace. 3 months later, I stood on stage at the annual Women in Finance Gala, accepting an award for innovation in financial analytics. The same hall where I once watched others take credit for my work was now echoing with my name. "Congratulations, Sara," Ellen whispered as she handed me the plaque. I looked out at the audience, rows of professionals, some who had once dismissed me, some who now respected me. I took a breath and said, "When I started in this industry, I thought hard work alone was enough. But the truth is, integrity is harder. It costs more, and sometimes it's the only thing that keeps you from disappearing." Applause filled the hall. Cameras flashed. But all I saw were the faces of people, women, men, young analysts, who finally understood that silence could be strength if used wisely. After the event, as I was leaving, I heard a small voice call out, Ms. Antony! It was Emily Hayes, Linda's daughter. She looked nervous, holding a program book in her hand. Congratulations, she said shyly. I got accepted into the internship. I start next week, I smiled. That's wonderful, Emily. I'm looking forward to seeing your work. Her eyes brightened. My mom said, "You're the best mentor anyone could have." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Maybe this was Linda's last act of redemption, trusting her daughter's future to the woman she once betrayed. "Thank you," I said finally. "We'll make sure you learn from the best and the worst." She nodded, understanding more than her years should allow. Months passed. Emily proved to be sharp, curious, and humble, the kind of person I wished I'd had by my side years ago. Watching her grow reminded me that revenge wasn't the end of a story. It was just the middle. Justice heals what anger cannot. During one of our coffee breaks, she said softly, "My mom's been reading your interviews. She told me she's proud of you." That surprised me, but all I said was, "Tell her I wish her well." It wasn't reconciliation, but it was peace. By the end of the year, I was invited to lead a global initiative for ethical transparency in data analytics. The press covered it widely. The analyst who changed corporate credit culture. I stood before a crowd of executives and interns alike, explaining how our industry could do better, how acknowledgement was not a threat, but a foundation. And when the Q&A ended, someone asked, "What made you start this movement?" I paused, smiled, and answered honestly. Someone once told me I was replaceable, that my silence made me weak, but they were wrong. I just needed time to find my voice, and when I did, it echoed. The room erupted in applause. That night I walked home under city lights, my reflection flickering in the glass buildings I once felt invisible inside. I thought about the girl I used to be, scared, overlooked, desperate for validation. She would have wanted revenge, but the woman I'd become wanted balance. I opened my laptop and looked at a message from Ellen. "You've done it, Sarah. The cycle's broken. Take a breath now." And I did. I closed the computer, made tea, and watched the rain streak down the window, each drop blurring the city into something softer. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hidden anymore. I was whole. It had been 6 months since Linda left the firm, and the storm had finally settled into a calm I'd never known before. The office no longer felt like a battlefield. The air was lighter, the meetings more honest, and my reflection in the mirrored walls no longer looked like someone bracing for impact. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was living, but with victory came an unexpected quiet. Revenge had given me justice, but not peace. Not right away, at least. I had to learn how to exist without the constant need to prove myself, without the adrenaline that had fueled me through every long night and silent humiliation. Some mornings, I'd sit at my desk before the day began, staring at the skyline outside my office window. The same city that once felt like an enemy now looked softer, even kind. The emails that used to sting. "We've decided to go another direction. Please revise per Linda's notes," had been replaced with invitations, requests for insight, and partnerships from companies I once dreamed of working with. I should have been elated. But instead, I found myself reflecting more than celebrating. Maybe it's because I realized revenge doesn't rewind time. It doesn't undo the pain. It just gives you the choice to turn it into something useful. Ellen had been right all along. Justice doesn't mean destruction. It means truth finally has a voice. And my voice was louder than ever. When Emily joined as an intern, I saw a chance to rewrite what mentorship meant. I didn't want her to inherit her mother's fear or my bitterness. So I did the opposite of what Linda had done to me. I taught her everything: how to own her work, how to speak clearly in meetings, how to listen before defending herself. She blossomed quickly. By the end of her internship, she was leading her own small projects and presenting them with confidence. On her last day, she left me a note that read, "You taught me that kindness isn't weakness. It's power that doesn't need validation." That one line broke me a little. because maybe, after all this time, that's what I'd been trying to prove. I hadn't heard from Linda again since her email. Until one afternoon, months later, when I ran into her at a leadership conference. I spotted her across the room before she saw me. Her once commanding presence dimmed, but not destroyed. She still carried herself with that same poise, but there was humility now. A quiet recognition in her eyes. When she noticed me, she hesitated, then approached. "Congratulations," she said softly. "You've built quite the reputation." "Thank you," I replied, matching her calm. For a moment, we just stood there, the air heavy with the weight of what had been said and what hadn't. "I was wrong about you," she finally admitted. "You didn't need me to open doors for you. You were already walking toward them. I was just too afraid to watch you go through." It wasn't an apology in the traditional sense, but it was real. And I realized forgiveness didn't have to mean forgetting. It just meant freeing yourself from the need to hold on. "I wish you well, Linda," I said, and I meant it. Healing didn't come in a single moment. It came in fragments, quiet evenings, laughter over lunch with colleagues who now treated me as an equal, moments when I caught myself smiling without fear. It came in small choices, choosing rest over proving myself, gratitude over resentment. It came when I started mentoring more women, helping them navigate an industry that had tried to shrink me. I wanted them to know what I hadn't, that power built on kindness is unshakable, that the world only underestimates you until you show it what silence can do. A year after the summit, I was invited to keynote at an international finance conference. The theme was resilience in modern leadership. As I stepped on stage, I looked at the audience, hundreds of faces waiting for a story they could connect to. I spoke not about data or projections, but about truth. About what it feels like to be invisible, and what it takes to be seen again. Success, I told them, isn't about proving your worth to those who doubted you. It's about finally believing it yourself. When I finished, the standing ovation wasn't just for the speech. It was for every person in that room who had ever been silenced. That night, back in my hotel room, I wrote something I hadn't in years, a letter to the girl I used to be. "Dear Sara, you were never small. You just grew in a place that didn't have enough light to see you clearly, but you kept going anyway, and that's what made you powerful. You didn't have to shout to be heard. You didn't have to fight to be seen. You just had to keep doing what you believed in until the noise faded and the truth stood on its own. You made it, and you're still becoming." I folded the note and slipped it into my journal, not for closure, but as a reminder, because even after everything, I was still learning how to forgive the silence that had shaped me. When people asked what came next, I told them I didn't know, and that was the beauty of it. For the first time, my life wasn't driven by revenge or fear. It was driven by purpose. I started consulting part-time, teaching workshops on ethical leadership and data transparency. I even started a small foundation to fund mentorship programs for young analysts from underrepresented backgrounds. Ellen retired that year. At her farewell, she hugged me tightly. "You were my favorite project," she whispered. I laughed through tears. "And you were the reason I didn't quit," she smiled. Then we both did our jobs right. On quiet nights, I still thought of how it all began. The betrayal, the pain, the long climb back. But those memories didn't sting anymore. They felt distant, like old scars that no longer ached when touched. I realized that revenge had never really been the destination. It was just the bridge to something greater. Self-respect, freedom, and peace. And as I closed my journal that night, I whispered the same words I once said to myself at my lowest. "You're not done. You're just beginning." I stood on the balcony of my apartment that night, the city humming softly below me. I realized it didn't taste like anything at all. It just felt quiet. For the first time in years, I could breathe without bitterness filling my lungs. The silence that once suffocated me now soothed me. The wind carried the hum of passing cars and distant laughter, and I smiled to myself, thinking how life keeps moving, even after the wars we fight inside it. The company had changed since Linda's departure. The The culture was softer, more transparent. Credit was shared, teamwork was real, and my voice, the same one that had once trembled at conference tables, now carried weight. People listened when I spoke. But more than that, I listened to myself. I no longer needed anyone's validation. I had built my own definition of worth, piece by piece, out of the rubble of everything I'd lost. I didn't want to be remembered as the woman who exposed corruption or the analyst who took down her boss. I wanted to be remembered as someone who proved that truth. When protected fiercely enough, can survive anything. The kind of truth that doesn't shout, but endures. One evening after a long meeting, Ellen came to see me. She had retired months earlier but still dropped by sometimes, just to check on her favorite troublemaker, as she called me. She looked around my new corner office and grinned. "I always knew you'd end up here," she said. "But I didn't know you'd rebuild the whole place while you were at it." I laughed softly. "It's strange," I said. "For years I wanted to climb to the top so they'd finally see me. Now that I'm here, I just want to make sure no one else ever has to go through what I did." "That's the difference between ambition and purpose," she said. "Ambition is about you. Purpose is about everyone after you." Her words stayed with me long after she left. Maybe that was what this whole story was about. Not revenge, but legacy. Not payback, but change. A few days later, the firm hosted a mentorship luncheon. I was the guest speaker, surrounded by bright-eyed interns and new hires. Among them sat Emily, smiling nervously, taking notes like she always did. When I looked at her, I didn't see Linda's daughter anymore. I saw a young woman who was learning to stand in her own light, untainted by her mother's shadows. When I spoke, I didn't talk about betrayal. I talked about courage, about the quiet kind, the kind that keeps you working when nobody's watching, the kind that doesn't need applause. I told them about failure and patience, and how integrity will always outlast manipulation. And when I finished, the applause felt different from all the others before it. It wasn't for what I'd survived, it was for what I'd become. After the event, Emily walked up to me. "You know," she said softly, "my mom told me that what happened between you two taught her something. She said it was the first time she realized what power could look like when it's kind." That almost made me tear up. For all the chaos that had started this journey, maybe something good had come from it after all. Maybe the ending didn't need to be cruel to be complete. Months later, I stood again at the same financial summit, where everything had changed for me. This time, not as a contestant, but as a keynote speaker. The crowd was massive. Professionals, students, leaders, all waiting to hear from me, the woman whose name had once been buried under someone else's. As I walked onto the stage, a wave of memories hit me. The betrayal, the sleepless nights, the humiliation, the slow, steady fight to rise again. I took a breath and began. 2 years ago, I said, I stood in this same hall as a participant. Back then, I believed success meant being seen. I was wrong. Success is when you don't need to convince anyone that you deserve your place here. A ripple of murmurs filled the room. I looked at their faces, hopeful, anxious, familiar, and continued. When someone steals your light, don't waste your energy trying to take theirs away. Build your own stage, your own spotlight. Let your work speak so loudly that no one can ever silence it again. When I finished, the audience rose to their feet. The applause wasn't thunderous. It was warm, genuine. It filled the air like something sacred. Afterward, a young analyst approached me backstage. "Ms. Antony," she said, "how did you not give up?" I smiled. "I did," I admitted. Many times. But then I remembered, giving up is a luxury only the guilty deserve. The rest of us just pause, breathe, and start again. She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. I saw a reflection of my younger self in her. Scared, hopeful, stubborn. And I silently promised her that she would never be invisible again. That night, as I walked through the city, I thought about all the people who had once doubted me. Some were gone, some had apologized, and some had simply vanished into their own stories. But it didn't matter anymore. I no longer needed an audience to validate my triumph. The peace I'd earned was quiet, the kind that doesn't need applause. When I reached home, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at the woman I'd become. My reflection didn't look like revenge. It looked like freedom. I picked up my journal, the same one that had carried years of plans, pain, and persistence, and wrote the final words of this chapter of my life. I forgive her. I forgive myself, because moving forward is the only victory that lasts. Then I closed it, not with anger, not with pride, but with peace. I turned off the lights, letting the city's glow spill through the windows. Tomorrow would be another day, another challenge, another climb. But for tonight, I rested. I was no longer the girl who had been overlooked, nor the woman consumed by revenge. I was something better, whole. And if my story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they too deserve respect and unconditional love. Because sometimes the voices they try to silence end up echoing the loudest. Do you know what I've learned through all this? That silence, truth, and time are the most powerful weapons you can ever have. So tell me, what would you do if the world doubted you, but you knew deep down that you were meant to rise,